as a means of recording the passage of time. The 11th century is the period from 1001 to 1100 in accordance with the Julian calendar in the Common Era, and the first century of the second millennium. In the history of Europe, this period is considered the early part of the High Middle Ages. There was a sudden decline of Byzantine power and rise of Norman domination over much of Europe, along with the prominent role in Europe of notably influential popes. In northern Italy, a growth of population in urban centers gave rise to early organized capitalism and more sophisticated, commercialized culture by the late 11th century. In Ukraine, there was the golden age for the Principality of Kiev and Rus. In Song dynasty China and the classical Islamic world, this century marked the high point for both classical Chinese civilization, science and technology, and classical Islamic science, philosophy, technology and literature. Rival political factions at the Song dynasty court created strife amongst the leading statesmen and ministers of the empire. Chola-era India and Fatimid-era Egypt had reached the zenith in military might and international influence. The Western Chalukya Empire also rose to power by the end of the century. In this century, the Turkish Seljuk dynasty comes to power in Western Asia over the now fragmented Abbasid realm, while the first of the Crusades were waged towards the close of the century. In Japan, the Fujiwara clan continued to dominate the affairs of state. In Korea, the Goryeo kingdom flourished and faced external threats from the Liao dynasty. In Vietnam, the Lai dynasty began, while in Myanmar the pagan kingdom reached its height of political and military power. In the Americas, the Toltec and Mixtec civilizations flourished in Central America, along with the Wari culture of South America and the Mississippian culture of North America. Overview. In European history, the 11th century is regarded as the beginning of the High Middle Ages, an age subsequent to the Early Middle Ages. The century began while the Translatio Imperia of 962 was still somewhat novel and ended in the midst of the investiture controversy. It saw the final Christianization of Scandinavia and the emergence of the Peace and Truce of God movements, the Gregorian reforms, and the Crusades, which revitalized a church under papacy that had survived tarnished by the tumultuous 10th century. In 1054, the Great Schism rent the church in two. However, in Germany, the century was marked by the ascendancy of the Holy Roman Emperors, who hit their high water mark under the Salians. In Italy, it opened with the integration of the kingdom into the empire, and the royal palace at Pavia was summoned in 1024. By the end of the century, Lombard and Byzantine rule in the Mezzogiorno had been usurped by the Normans, and the power of the territorial magnates was being replaced by that of the citizens of the cities in the north. In Britain, it saw the transformation of Scotland into a single, more unified and centralized kingdom, and the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The social transformations wrought in these lands brought them into the fuller orbit of European feudal politics. In France, it saw the nadir of the monarchy and a zenith of the great magnates, especially the Dukes of Aquitaine and Normandy, who could thus foster such distinctive contributions of the lands as the pious warrior who conquered Britain, Italy, and the East, and the impious peace lover, the troubadour, who crafted out of the European vernacular its first great literary themes. There were also the first figures of the intellectual movement known as scholasticism, which emphasized dialectic arguments in disputes of Christian theology as well as classical philosophy. In Spain, the century opened with the successors of the last caliphs of Córdoba and ended in the successors of the Almoravids. In between was a period of Christian unification under Navarre's hegemony and success in the Reconquista against the Taifa kingdoms that replaced the fallen caliphate. In China, there was a triangular affair of continued war and peace settlements between the Song dynasty, the Tanguts led Western Xia in the northwest, and the Khitans of the Liao dynasty in the northeast. Meanwhile, opposing political factions evolved at the Song imperial court of Kaifeng. The political reformers at court, called the New Policies Group, were led by Emperor Shenzong of Song and the chancellors Fan Zhongyan and Wang Anshi, while the political conservatives were led by Chancellor Sima Guang and Empress Duo Jigao, regent of the young Emperor Zhezong of Song. Heated political debate and sectarian intrigue followed, while political enemies were often dismissed from the capital to govern frontier regions in the deep south where malaria was known to be very fatal to northern Chinese people. This period also represents a high point in classical Chinese science and technology, with figures such as Su Song and Shen Kuo, as well as the age where the matured form of the Chinese pagoda was accomplished in Chinese architecture. In India, the Chola dynasty reached its height of naval power under leaders such as Rajaraja Chola I and Rajendra Chola I, dominating southern India, Sri Lanka, and regions of Southeast Asia. They also sent raids into what is now Thailand. In Japan, the Fujiwara clan dominated central politics by acting as imperial regents, controlling the actions of the Emperor of Japan, who acted merely as a puppet monarch during the Aran period. In the Middle East, the Fatimid Empire of Egypt reached its zenith only to face steep decline, much like the Byzantine Empire in the first half of the century. The Seljuks came to prominence while the Abbasid caliphs held traditional titles without real, tangible authority in state affairs. In Nigeria, formation of city-states, kingdoms and empires, including Hausa kingdoms and Borno dynasty in North, Oyo and Benin kingdoms in South. In Korea, the rulers of the Goryeo kingdom were able to concentrate more central authority into their own hands than in that of the nobles, and were able to fend off two Khitan invasions with their armies. Events 1001 Mahmud of Ghazni, Muslim leader of Ghazni, begins a series of raids into northern India. He finishes in 1027 with the destruction of Somnath. c. 1001, Vikings, led by Leif Erikson, established small settlements in and around Vinland in North America. 1001 to 1008, Japanese lady Murasaki Shikibu writes the tale of Genji. 1001 plus or minus 40 years. Baetushan volcano in what would be the Chinese-Korean border erupts with a force of 6.5, the fourth largest Holocene blast. 1003, Robert II of France invades the Duchy of Burgundy, then ruled by Otto William, Duke of Burgundy. The initial invasion is unsuccessful, but Robert II eventually gained the acceptance of the Roman Catholic Church in 1016 and annexed Burgundy into his realm. 1004, the Librarian University Dar al-Hekmah is founded in Egypt under the Fatimids. 1005, the Treaty of Shanyuan was signed between the Chinese Song dynasty and the Khitan Liao dynasty. 1006, King Dharmawangsa's Medang kingdom falls under invasion of King Vurawari from El Waram. 1008, the Fatimid Egyptian sea captain Domiyut travels to the Buddhist pilgrimage site in Shandong, China, to seek out the Chinese Emperor Zhenzong of Song with gifts from his ruling Imam al-Hakim by Amra Allah, successfully reopening diplomatic relations between Egypt and China that had been lost since the collapse of the Tang dynasty. 1009, Lai Taiti overthrew the anterior Lai dynasty of Vietnam, establishing the Lai dynasty. 1009 to 1010, the Lombard known as Melus of Bari led an insurrection against the Byzantine Catapan of Italy, John Kirkuas, as the latter was killed in battle and replaced by Basil Macedonites, who brought Byzantine reinforcements. 1010 to 1011, the Second Goryeo-Khatan War, the Korean king was forced to flee the capital temporarily, but unable to establish a foothold and fearing a counterattack, the Khatan forces withdrew. 1011 to 1021, Ibn al-Haytham, a famous Iraqi scientist working in Egypt, feigned madness in fear of angering the Egyptian Caliph al-Hakim by Amr Allah, and was kept under house arrest from 1011 to 1021. During this time, he wrote his influential Book of Optics. 1014, the Byzantine armies of Basil II are victorious over Samuil of Bulgaria in the Battle of Clydian. 1014, the Gaelic forces of Munster and most other Irish kingdoms under High King Brian Boru defeat combined Leinster Viking force in the Battle of Clontarf, but Brian Boru is killed at the end of the battle. 1014 to 1020, the Book of Healing, a vast philosophical and scientific encyclopedia, is written by Avicenna, Persian scholar. 1015, in the Battle of Nesjar in Oslofjord, Norway, the forces of Olav Haraldsson fought the forces of Sven Håkonsson, with the victory for Olav. 1018, the First Bulgarian Empire is conquered by the Byzantine Empire. 1018, the Byzantine armies of Basil Bojan are victorious at the Battle of Cannae against the Lombards under Melus of Bari. 1018, the Third Goryeo-Khatan War, the Korean general Gangnam Chan inflicted heavy losses to Khatan forces at the Battle of Kwiju. The Khatan withdrew and both sides signed a peace treaty. 1019, Erlanger establishes a kingdom of Kahuripan. 1020s 1030s 1020s, the Canon of Medicine, a medical encyclopedia, is written by Avicenna, Persian Muslim scholar. 1021, the ruling Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim by Amr Allah disappears suddenly, possibly assassinated by his own sister Sit al-Mulk, which leads to the open persecution of the Druze by Ismaili Shia. The Druze proclaimed that al-Hakim went into hiding, whereupon he would return as the Mahdi savior. 1025, the Chola dynasty of India uses its naval powers to conquer the Southeast Asian kingdom of Srivijaya, turning it into a vassal. 1025, ruler Rajendra Chola I moved the capital city of the empire from Thanjavur to Gangaikonda Kolapuram. 1025, Rajendra Chola, the Chola king from Kolamandala in South India, conquered Panay and Kadaram from Srivijaya and occupied it for some time. The Cholas continued a series of raids and conquests of parts Srivijayan Empire in Sumatra and Malay Peninsula. 1028, the king of Srivijaya appeals to the Song dynasty Chinese, sending a diplomatic mission to the capital at Kaifeng. 1030, Stephen I of the Kingdom of Hungary defeats Conrad II of the Holy Roman Empire. After the war, Conrad had ceded the lands between the rivers Lethe and Fischer to Hungary in the summer of 1031. 1030, the Battle of Stiklestad. Olav Haraldsson loses to his pagan vassals and is killed in the battle. He is later canonized and becomes the patron saint of Norway and Rex Perpetuum Norvegiae. 1030, Sanghyang Tapak inscription in the Sikati River bank in Sibadak, Sukabumi, West Java, mentioned about the establishment of sacred forest and kingdom of Sunda. 1035, Raoul Glaber chronicles a devastating three-year famine induced by climatic changes in southern France. 1035, Canute the Great dies, and his kingdom of present-day Norway, England, and Denmark was split amongst three rivals to his throne. 1035, William Maynard ventures to the Mezzogiorno. 1037, Ferdinand I of Leon conquered the kingdom of Galicia. 1040, Duncan I of Scotland slain in battle. Macbeth succeeds him. 1041, Samuel Abba became king of Hungary. 1041, Erlanger divided Kahuripan into two kingdoms. Jangala and Kadirian abdicated in favor of his successors. 1042, the Normans established Melfi as the capital of southern Italy. 1041 to 1048, Chinese artisan Baisheng invents ceramic movable type printing. 1043, the Byzantine Empire and Kievan Rus engage in a naval confrontation, although a later treaty is signed between two parties that included the marriage alliance of Vsevolod I of Kiev to a princess daughter of Constantine IX Monomachos. 1043, the Byzantine general George Manassas, who had served in Sicily back in 1038, is proclaimed emperor by his troops while he is Catapan of Italy. He leads an unsuccessful rebellion against Constantine IX Monomachos and is killed in battle in Macedonia during his march towards Constantinople. 1043, the Song dynasty chancellor of China, Fan Zhongyin, and prominent official and historian Ouyang Xiu introduced the Quinley reforms, which would be rescinded by the court in 1045 due to partisan resistance to reforms. 1043, the Kingdom of Nri of West Africa is said to have started in this year with these Nri Fikuanum. 1044, the Chinese Wujing Zonglao, written by Zheng Gonglang and Yang Vide, is the first book to describe gunpowder formulas. It also described the use in warfare, such as black powder impregnated fuses for flamethrowers. It also described an early form of the compass, a thermoremanence compass. 1044, Henry III of the Holy Roman Empire defeats the Kingdom of Hungary in the Battle of Emiacutenefo. Peter Ursolo captured Samuel Abba after the battle, executing him and restoring his claim to the throne. The Kingdom of Hungary then briefly becomes a vassal to the Holy Roman Empire. 1045, the Zirids, a Berber dynasty of North Africa, break their allegiance with the Fatimid court of Egypt and recognize the Abbasids of Baghdad as the true caliphs. 1050s 1052, Fujiwara no Yorimichi converts the rural villa at Byodo-in into a famous Japanese Buddhist temple. 1053, the Norman commander Humphrey of Hauteville is victorious in the Battle of Civitate against the Lombards and the papal coalition led by Rudolf of Benevento. Pope Leo IX himself is captured by the Normans. 1054, the Great Schism, in which the Western and Eastern Orthodox churches separated from each other. Similar schisms in the past had been later repaired, but this one continues after nearly 1,000 years. 1054, a large supernova is observed by astronomers, the remnants of which would form the Crab Nebula. 1054, the Battle of Atapuerca is fought between Garcia of Navarre and Ferdinand I of Leon. 1055, the Seljuk Turks capture Baghdad, taking the Buyid Emir al-Malik al-Rahim prisoner. 1056, Ferdinand I of Leon, King of Castile and King of Leon, is crowned Imperator Totius Hispaniae. 1057, Anurata, ruler of the pagan kingdom, defeated the Mon city of Thatan, thus unifying all of Myanmar. 1057, invasion of the Banu Hilil, Kairouan destroyed, Zirids reduced to tiny coastal strip, remainder fragments into petty Bedouin emirates. 1060s 1061 to 1091, Norman conquest of Sicily in the Mediterranean Sea. 1065 Seljuks' first invasion to Georgia under leadership of Alp Arslan. 1065 Independence of the Kingdom of Galicia and Portugal under the rule of Garcia. 1066 In the Battle of Stamford Bridge, the last Anglo-Saxon king Harold Godwinson defeated his brother Tostig Godwinson and Harold III of Norway. 1066 Edward the Confessor dies. Harold Godwinson is killed in the Battle of Hastings, while the Norman William the Conqueror is crowned King of England. 1066 The Jewish vizier Joseph ibn Nagrela and many others are killed in the 1066 Granada massacre. 1068–1073 The reign of Japanese Emperor Go-Sanjo brings about a brief period where central power is taken out of the hands of the Fujiwara clan. 1068 Virara General Chola begins sending military raids into Malaysia and Indonesia. 1068 Seljuks destroyed Georgia for the second time. 1069–1076 With the support of Emperor Shenzong of Song, Chancellor Wang Anshi of the Chinese Song dynasty introduces the new policies, including the Baojia system of societal organization and militias, low-cost loans for farmers, taxes instead of corvée labor, government monopolies on tea, salt, and wine, reforming the land survey system, and eliminating the poetry requirement in the imperial examination system to gain bureaucrats of a more practical bent. 1070 The death of Attira Jendra Chola and the ascension of Kulo Thunga Chola I marks the transition between the medieval Cholas and the Chalukya Cholas. 1071 Defeat of the Byzantine Empire at the Battle of Manzikert by the Seljuk army of Alp Arslan, ending 3 centuries of a Byzantine military and economic golden age. 1072 The Battle of Golpethera is fought between Sancho II of Castile and Alfonso VI of Castile. 1073 The Seljuk Turks capture Ankara from the Byzantines. 1074 The Seljuk Turks captured Jerusalem from the Byzantines and cut pilgrim transit. 1075 Henry IV suppresses the rebellion of Saxony in the First Battle of Langensalza. 1075 The investiture controversy is sparked when Pope Gregory VII asserted in the Dictatus Papae extended rights granted to the Pope and new interpretation of God's role in founding the Church itself. 1075 Chinese official and diplomat Shen Kuo asserts the Song dynasty's rightful border lines by using court archives against the bold bluff of Emperor Daozong of Liao, who had asserted that Liao dynasty territory exceeded its earlier accepted bounds. 1075–1076 A civil war in the Western Chalukya Empire of India. The Western Chalukya monarch Samshwara II plans to defeat his own ambitious brother, Vikramaditya VI, by allying with a traditional enemy, Kulo Thunga Chola I of the Chola Empire. Samshvara's forces suffered heavy defeat, and was eventually captured and imprisoned by Vikramaditya, who proclaimed himself king. 1075–1077 The Song dynasty of China and the Lai dynasty of Vietnam fight a border war, with Vietnamese forces striking first on land and with the navy, and afterwards Song armies advancing as far as modern-day Hanoi, the capital, but withdraw after Lai makes peace overtures. In 1082, both sides exchange the territories that they had captured during the war, and later a border agreement is reached. 1076 The Ghana Empire is attacked by the Almoravids, who sack the capital of Kumbi Sala, ending the rule of King Tunka Manin. 1076. The Chinese Song dynasty places strict government monopolies over the production and distribution of sulfur and saltpeter, in order to curb the possibility of merchants selling gunpowder formula components to enemies such as the Tanguts and Khitans. 1076. The Song Chinese allied with southern Vietnamese Kampia and Cambodian Chendla to conquer the Lai dynasty, which was an unsuccessful campaign. 1077. The walk to Canossa by Henry IV of the Holy Roman Empire. 1077. Chinese official Su Song is sent on a diplomatic mission to the Liao dynasty and discovers that the Khitan calendar is more mathematically accurate than the Song calendar. Emperor Zhezong later sponsors Su Song's astronomical clock tower in order to compete with Liao astronomers. 1078. Oleg of Chernigov is defeated in battle by his brother Vsevolod I of Kiev. Oleg escaped to Tutarakhan, but was imprisoned by the Khazars, sent to Constantinople as a prisoner, and then exiled to Rhodes. 1078. The revolt of Nicephorus III against Byzantine ruler Michael VII. 1079. Malik Shah I reforms the Iranian calendar. 1079. Franks start to settle around the Way of St. James. 1080s 1080 to 1081. The Chinese statesman and scientist Shen Kuo is put in command of the campaign against the Western Xia, and although he successfully halts their invasion route to Yanzhou, another officer disobeys imperial orders and the campaign is ultimately a failure because of it. 1081. Birth of Urraca of Leon and Castile, future Queen of Castile and Leon. 1084. The enormous Chinese historical work of the Zizhi Tongzhan is compiled by scholars under Chancellor Sima Guang, completed in 294 volumes and included 3 million written Chinese characters. 1085. Alfonso VI of Castile captures the Moorish Muslim city of Toledo, Spain. 1085. The Cathedral Skolan Lund School of Sweden is established by Canute IV of Denmark. 1086. Compilation of the Doomsday Book by order of William I of England. It was similar to a modern-day government census, as it was used by William to thoroughly document all the landholdings within the kingdom that could be properly taxed. 1086. The Battle of Arizona Zalacar between the Almoravids and Castilians. 1087. A new office at the Chinese International Seaport of Quanzhou is established to handle and regulate taxes and tariffs on all mercantile transactions of foreign goods coming from Africa, Arabia, India, Sri Lanka, Persia, and Southeast Asia. 1087. The Italian cities of Genoa and Pisa engage in the African Mahdia campaign. 1088. The renowned polymath Chinese scientist and official Shen Kuo made the world's first reference to the magnetic compass in his book Dream Pool Essays, along with encyclopedic documentation and inquiry into scientific discoveries. 1088. The University of Bologna is established. 1088. Rebellion of 1088 against William II of England led by Odo of Bayeux. 1090s-1091. Normans from the Duchy of Normandy take control of Malta and surrounding islands. 1091. The Byzantine Empire under Alexios I Komnenos and his Cuman allies defeat Pechenegs at the Battle of Livonian. 1093. Vikramaditya VI, ruler of the Western Chalukya Empire, defeats the army of Kulothunga Chola I in the Battle of Vengi. 1093. When the Chinese Empress Dowager dies, the conservative faction that had followed Sima Guang is ousted from court. The liberal reforms of Wang Anshi reinstated, and Emperor Zhezong of Song halted all negotiations with the Tanguts of the Western Xia, resuming an armed conflict with them. 1093, the Kipchaks defeat princes of Kiev and Rus at the Battle of the Stuna River. 1093, Battle of Alnwick. Malcolm III of Scotland is killed by the forces of William II of England. 1094, the astronomical clock tower of Kaifeng, China, engineered by the official Su Song, is completed. 1094, El Cid, the great Spanish hero, conquers the Muslim city of Valencia. 1094, U.S. succession crisis following the reign of the Fatimid Caliph Mahmud al-Mustanzir Billah sparks a rebellion which leads to the split of Ismaili Shia into the new Nizari religious branch. 1095, Pope Urban II calls upon Western Europeans to take up the cross and reclaim the Holy Lands, officially commencing the First Crusade. C. 1095 to 1099, earliest extant manuscript of the Song of Roland. 1096, University of Oxford in England holds its first lectures. 1097, the Siege of Nicaea during the First Crusade. 1097, Diego Rodriguez, a son of El Cid, dies in the Battle of Consuegra and Almoravid victory. 1098, the Siege of Antioch during the First Crusade. 1098, Pope Urban II makes an appearance at the Siege of Capua. 1098, the Dongpo Academy of Hainan, China is built in honor of the Song dynasty Chinese official and poet Su Shi, who was exiled for criticizing reforms of the New Policies Group. 1098, the birth of Hildegard of Bingen, doctor of the Church, abbess, monastic leader, mystic, prophetess, medical, German composer and writer, polymath. 1099, the Siege of Jerusalem by European Crusaders. 1099, after the Kingdom of Jerusalem was established, the Alik USA Mosque was made into the residential palace for the kings of Jerusalem. 1099, death of the great Spanish hero Rodrigo Diaz El Cid Campida. 1099, after building considerable strength, David IV of Georgia discontinues tribute payments to the Seljuk Turks. King Anurata of Myanmar made a pilgrimage to Ceylon, returning to convert his country to Theravada Buddhism. The Tuareg migrate to the Air region. Kanem Bornu expands southward into modern Nigeria. The first of 7 Hausa city-states are founded in Nigeria. The HODH region of Mauritania becomes desert.